One of those mines did not explode. The U.S. Navy is saying that that mine bears striking resemblance to the limpet mines. Confidence by the U.S. Navy that they believe that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the special forces of the Iranian Navy, were behind this attack, that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards has actually paraded out in public on numerous occasions in the past.
The Persian Gulf has always been a powder keg, a place where rivalries, threats, and military maneuvers play out against a backdrop of oil routes and fragile peace. But on one tense night, that powder keg nearly exploded. An American warship patrolling international waters found itself in the crosshairs of Iranian forces. The Iranians were bold, circling, locking on, and taunting through radio transmissions. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but the U.S. commander didn't flinch. Instead, he gave a chilling order. Wait for their first shot. And when that first shot finally came, the retaliation was so overwhelming, so precise, that Iranian forces were effectively erased from the map. The encounter began with routine patrols. The U.S. Navy had deployed one of its destroyers to secure the busy shipping lanes of the Gulf. These waters are some of the most vital in the world, carrying a huge share of global oil supply. But they are also some of the most contested, with Iran frequently testing boundaries.
Have revealed to the world what they believe is direct evidence and forensic evidence that links the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy. And we also heard from the Trump administration that they will take measures to defend U.S. assets and oil tankers in the region as well.
Small, fast boats belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps often buzz warships, probing their defenses. This wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how aggressively they moved in on this night. At first, the Iranian boat simply shadowed the destroyer. Then came the taunts over the radio, mocking messages in broken English, threats about leaving the Gulf or paying the price. The U.S. crew remained silent, professional, focused. The warship's captain knew the rules of engagement. America never fired first. To do so would escalate the conflict, and escalation in the Gulf could spiral into war.
To over 6 attacks on oil tankers since May 12th, as the Iranians, of course, are denying that these attacks took place.
Instead, the captain repeated the order that had been drilled into the crew all night. Hold fire until they make the first move. But Iran's forces wanted confrontation. They began to close in, their boats darting dangerously close to the destroyer's hull. Then, in the distance, radar picked up something more ominous, an Iranian missile battery going active along the coast. Within seconds, the destroyer's combat information center lit up with alarms. Iranian forces weren't just posturing anymore. They were locking on. The first shot came suddenly. A missile streaked from the Iranian coast, slicing through the night sky. In that instant, the waiting ended. The U.S. destroyer's Aegis combat system sprang to life, launching interceptors that ripped the missile from the sky before it could even approach.
Part of this information was gathered from the design of the limpet mine. The United Kingdom and Germany have also concluded that believe that Iran is also behind this attack, so adding to the ongoing tensions in the region.
But the captain knew the attack had begun. The order was simple, cold, and final: return fire. What followed was nothing short of annihilation. The destroyer unleashed a storm of Tomahawk cruise missiles and precision-guided munitions. Iranian boats that had been circling like sharks were obliterated in seconds, their explosions lighting up the dark waters. Onshore missile sites that had dared to launch were struck with pinpoint accuracy, erased by U.S. firepower that traveled hundreds of miles in minutes. The night sky turned to daylight as flames erupted across Iranian positions. Iran's fighters tried to scramble, launching more missiles and sending aircraft to challenge the Americans. But the warship wasn't alone. From above, U.S. jets roared in from nearby carriers, cutting through the air with missiles of their own. Every Iranian launch was met with interception. Every movement answered with overwhelming force. It wasn't a fight, it was an erasure.
That was placed above the waterline on these tankers. That was meant not to sink the tankers, but to cause damage, perhaps to send a political signal. A magnet that was used to attach the mine to the ship was recovered, to include biometric data of the individuals that placed that mine.
The Revolutionary Guard had hoped to intimidate and test America's resolve. Instead, they had stumbled into a demonstration of absolute dominance. For the sailors aboard the U.S. destroyer, the battle felt surreal. One moment, they were waiting in tense silence, watching radar screens for the inevitable. The next, they were unleashing the full fury of one of the most powerful navies in history. The discipline of waiting for that first shot gave them the moral and strategic high ground. The response that followed gave them complete victory. When the smoke cleared, the Gulf was quiet again. Iranian boats were gone, missile batteries silenced, and the message was unmistakable. The U.S. Navy hadn't just defended itself, it had delivered a blow so devastating that no one watching could mistake the balance of power.
One of those mines did not explode. The U.S. Navy is saying that that mine bears striking resemblance to the limpet mines, confidence by the U.S. Navy that they believe that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the special forces of the Iranian Navy, were behind this attack, that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards has actually paraded out in public on numerous occasions in the past.
America had shown restraint, then unleashed overwhelming force, a 1-2 combination that reminded the world why its fleet rules the seas. For Iran, the lesson was painful. They had sought to provoke, to show strength, perhaps even to score a propaganda victory. Instead, their forces were left shattered, their equipment destroyed, and their gamble exposed as reckless. For the international community, the clash highlighted both the dangers of brinkmanship and the scale of American power. Allies whispered that this was a reminder of why U.S. ships patrol those waters. Enemies saw it as proof that one miscalculation could lead to total destruction. The story quickly spread across the globe. Some described it as a warning to all nations who would challenge U.S. dominance at sea. Others worried it was a prelude to wider conflict. But inside the Navy, the takeaway was simpler. Discipline and strength win battles. Waiting for the first shot ensured the world saw who the aggressor was, and responding with total force ensured the fight ended before it could spiral further. In many ways, it was a modern echo of Cold War strategy: patience, deterrence, then overwhelming retaliation. The U.S. Navy didn't go looking for a fight, but when it came, they ended it decisively. The sailors on that destroyer didn't just defend themselves. They carried out a demonstration of military doctrine at its purest. And for the Iranians, their mistake will be remembered as one of the costliest misjudgments in recent memory. The Gulf has seen countless close calls, but few as dramatic as this one. Pirates, smugglers, navies, and militias all test their limits in those waters. Yet this clash stood apart, not just for its violence but for its clarity. A warship waited, calm and disciplined, for an enemy to strike. The moment it happened, the response erased the threat completely, leaving no doubt about who controlled the seas. For the crew, it became a story they would never forget. A night when tension turned to chaos, and chaos turned to victory. For the U.S. Navy, it was another chapter in a long tradition of deterrence through strength. And for the world, it was a reminder. In the Persian Gulf, you may fire the first shot at an American warship, but you will not fire the last.